from Washington, this is VOA News. Another U.S. appeal for an end to bloodshed in Syria. Pakistan's Prime Minister demands an end to U.S. drone strikes. I'm Ray Kouguell reporting from Washington. U.S. and British officials are again urging all sides in the Syrian conflict to sit down and talk, and that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad will eventually have to step down. Officials from 11 nations known as the Friends of Syria met Tuesday with members of the Syrian opposition in London. Afterwards, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said officials agreed to pursue, in his words, every avenue available to bring this tragic conflict to an end.
Now, I don't know anybody who believes that the opposition will ever consent to Bashar al-Assad being part of that government. And if he thinks he's going to solve problems by running for re-election, I can say to him, I think with certainty, this war will not end as long as that's the case or he is there.
Officials of the Syrian National Coalition have suggested they may boycott possible peace talks if Mr. Assad is not forced to step down. Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif repeated his country's demand for an end to U.S. drone strikes inside Pakistan. In an address at the U.S. Institute of Peace in Washington Tuesday, Mr. Sharif said he wants to see U.S.-Pakistan relations improve, but the issue of drones has become a major irritant. The Pakistani leader meets President Obama at the White House today. U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is urging Afghan leaders to sign a bilateral security agreement. He calls it a key to ensuring peace after most international troops depart at the end of next year. VOA's Luis Ramirez has more from NATO headquarters in Brussels.
U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel met with Afghan Defense Minister Bismillah Khan Mohammadi on the sidelines of a NATO defense ministers gathering to discuss Afghanistan's prospects after the NATO mission ends in 2014. Mr. Hagel and other top U.S. defense officials say they are hopeful and confident Afghan leaders will conclude an agreement recently announced by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. On his flight to Brussels Monday, Mr. Hagel said he believes the Afghans also understand the need to quickly but carefully approve an agreement that will set the rules governing the presence of foreign troops remaining in the country after 2014. The preliminary agreement is now subject to approval by Afghan tribal leaders and the Afghan parliament. Luis Ramirez, VOA News, at NATO headquarters in Brussels.
Afghan election officials have disqualified more than half the candidates who registered to run in next year's presidential race. The country's Independent Election Commission says that 16 of the 26 potential candidates were dropped for reasons such as not having enough voter signatures or filing incomplete forms. Nigeria's military says it killed 37 suspected Boko Haram militants in a ground and air attack that started late Monday on an encampment in the country's embattled northeast Borno state. The military spokesman says arms and ammunition were recovered at the site and that several vehicles and motorcycles belonging to the Islamist group were destroyed. Firefighters in Australia have merged two massive wildfires in an effort to create one easier-to-control blaze ahead of dangerous weather conditions expected later today. Fire crews have worked since last week to contain the dozens of fires burning in New South Wales, Australia's most populous state. Rural Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons says the so-called back-burning operations are showing some positive results.
We are seeing some positive results of these very deliberate, very targeted, very decisive strategies being deployed, particularly in relation to backburning operations, both tactically and strategically, with a view to retarding the forward advancement of the main fire front particularly in light of tomorrow's weather conditions.
Forecasts call for windy and hot conditions, raising fears the 60 wildfires burning in the state could worsen. The United States labor market added a modest 148,000 new jobs in September, but the country's unemployment rate dropped to its lowest point in almost 5 years. The jobless rate last month edged down to 7.2%, 1/10 of a point better than the August figure. And Mexico is ordering an investigation into allegations the U.S. spied on President Enrique Peña Nieto before his election and on his predecessor Felipe Calderon. Speaking in Geneva, Mexico's Secretary of Foreign Affairs said President Obama is promising an investigation. I'm Ray Kouguell, VOA News. More at voanews.com.